If you enjoy the story, give it a like and feel free to leave a comment. Also, be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon to be the first to hear new cryptid tales. I'm always looking for stories to share, so if you've had your own encounter with the unknown, send me an email at cryptidtalesmel@gmail.com.
The Mountain Troll of Alaska. The question arises whether giants exist or not. For many centuries, maybe since the dawn of humankind, giants have been the subject of many tales and legends. But are they really only a myth? A made-up concept to scare children and frail old people? If one looks at the various reports of giant skeletons, which were found throughout the last centuries, then the probability is evoked that there are some substance and indications to the bold statement, which claims that giants are as real as everything else, which we perceive to be real. This story is the account of a mine worker who came face to face with something he could not even think of in his wildest dreams, because until he had this first-hand experience with one of the most terrifying cryptids, would not believe the tales of the natives, who had an oral tradition which only dedicated itself to the different species of giants. Yes, there are, according to many tribes, different species of giants. It seems that everything seems to come in a lush form, and there is even a great multitude amongst the most rare species. Perhaps they are gods, or plainly just nature's design. Who knows for sure? For we are not God, but mere mortal beings, at least most of us. It was the year 1920, as Mr. Benson was working for a mining company, unaware of the risks, but probably the good salary had enticed him and lured him into taking that job offer, which really was a good catch for a middle-aged man of 45. Mr. Benson was working near Juneau. In his report, his personal experiences, which probably preceded this encounter, that he had made with something so horrible, albeit incredible, happened in the same year near his workplace. But let the man speak for himself, for no one can describe the being better than him. Here is his diary and the entry which he had made on that day of the 10th of October, when he had stumbled across something so big and bipedal that his whole world view crushed in the blink of an eye. But not only that happened. Because of this experience, Mr. Benson eventually lost his mind and spent the rest of his life in an asylum. The poor man, I must admit. But let me not beat around the bush any longer and read to you the entry of his diary, which he had kept from the year 1915 until 1920. Another day of work has begun in the mine, where I have been working for several years now. The hard work in the mine is really strenuous and had truly fatigued my body. I don't know how much longer I can bear working under these horrible conditions, considering that my wage is not really good. But lately, I must say something worse is vexing my worried mind, and it is not the work per se. Some strange things have been occurring the last days, which cannot be blamed on the common perks of my co-workers. There is something out there, and I know it. I can feel it. And this day I could really feel its presence, which I cannot easily describe, but it is something, which is so out of this world to most, that I dare not speak of it in public, although I have the urge to do so, because the world should know that they are amongst us, even if they mostly hide in the vast forests and mountains of this and probably other states. I don't know exactly when I saw this beast, this giant, who should not exist according to conventional science. I just know that I can remember the thundering footsteps of this thing, which was on some kind of rampage. I think, if I remember well, that I was working in the lower part of the mine as I could hear the thumping sounds, which I could not associate with anything that should have been down there. For a moment or two, I was bedazzled and distressed. Then, as I ceased my work to check out what was going on, I saw two eyes, and the vague, shadowy silhouette of a creature who seemed to have humanoid features, although at first I could not really see it very well because of the dim lights in the mine. The creature, this being, was walking in one of the side corridors, but not standing straight because of its humongous stature, which I had the blessing, or should I say curse, of seeing, as I had finished my work for the day. Then it simply vanished out of my sight, only to return later at a different location. The strange thing was that it did not seem to notice me, or at least not be interested in me. Who knows how they tick? Perhaps I was not the adequate prey for it, which I somehow can understand if I think of my frail stature and my unstable mind. This could also be the reason why I am still here and writing down my personal experience with a giant troll, also known as a mountain giant. It probably spared my life for this reason, but still, it managed to scare the living daylights out of me, which I will explain in great detail now. I guess it must have been around 6 or 7. Sadly, I don't really keep an exact track of time, so I cannot really tell precisely when I saw the mountain troll again. But I know that I was on my way to my car, which was parked about a mile away from the mine. It was dark outside and quite chilly, and I had this feeling, which I was not able to suppress. This feeling, this notion, that someone or something was watching my every move and step. Prudently, I tried to walk at a quite fast pace and focus my mind on getting to the car as fast as possible. As I was about a half mile or so away from my car, and I could already see it in the distance where some lantern posts were shining, I suddenly could hear loud footsteps coming from the side of the path. A shadow appeared amidst the tall trees and moved quickly towards me. Then, in the light of the moon, I think that it was almost a full moon on this day, I could see the image of a huge man who had claws on his hands and fangs coming out of his mouth. This giant man, who probably was the same creature whom I encountered in the mine only a few hours prior, was standing near a tall cedar and gazing at me. He seemed to be holding a club or some sort of weapon. After staring at me with his fierce eyes, which penetrated my entire soul, he began swinging his arm and approached me. I just stood and could not move any further, for fear had overtaken my being completely. The giant stopped right in front of me, and now I realized that he must have been at least 20 feet tall. But not only his height was intimidating, no, it was his strong physique and his evil demeanor, which thoroughly had bethralled my mind. A while after the giant had directly confronted me, and I had the pleasure of hearing his deep and violent breathing, he picked me up and took me to the place where my car was parked. He thrust me on the ground and started to sniff at my body. "Not good. I don't like that kind of meat," his loud and deep voice roared. "Have to find some other meat. But maybe he is good for my children?" The giant continued whilst tossing me around on the ground. I was so scared that I did not know what to do but to pray to God above that he would spare my life just for this moment, because I did not want to leave my family, who would not believe that I had been a victim of something which they could not believe in. And actually, if I am honest, I don't blame them, because I also would not have believed in such a thing as a mountain giant if I had not had this terrible experience with one. Then something totally unexpected happened, and I cannot explain why until this day, if I am being frank with you. The troll, this giant of a creature, was about to swing its club and crush my head to bits. But something kept it from doing so, and soon I was about to find out why. The giant troll did not pay any more attention to me and was now staring at the lights of 10 cars, which had just arrived at the parking lot. Gunshots and screams were heard a minute or so after it had gone away from me and left me lying on the cold Alaskan ground, which was harsh and damp from the frosty soil. I was lucky, because some workers had arrived for the night shift. I think it must have been around 30 men who immediately began shooting at the creature, who did not expect any company at all. I was still trembling and panting on the ground while I could hear the roars of the giant troll and the blood-curdling death cries of some men who died in the fight against the troll which spared my life. I don't know how long I was lying on the ground, but I believe that I was taken by 2 men into a car, which looked like an ambulance. I guess that some of the men had called an ambulance after the fight with this ferocious beast that cost the lives of 7 men and left 10 others wounded. Later, I found out that the troll did not die, but none of them was prepared for such an encounter with a terrible, giant-like man who could easily survive the gunfire of multiple rifles. But as fate has it, the giant fled, pushing out a last cry of anguish and anger as it hurried back into the dark forest surrounding the parking lot. I found myself in a hospital, where I am now writing down my personal experience, which had entailed the death of 7 men, good men, who are still to be mourned. What grief and pain their families are going through, I honestly cannot imagine, but it must be terrible losing your beloved husband to such a beast, which most don't even believe to be real. Well, I am living proof that it is, because I have already been checked by a psychologist and a psychiatrist, and both are of the firm opinion that I am not mentally deranged or hallucinating, although both cannot accept that I had been almost killed by a mountain giant, which I call a mountain troll because its face had the features of some depictions of trolls, which I have seen in my childhood years, as I still believed in fairy tales which in fact are true. Luckily, I am feeling better, and the doctor said that I will be able to leave the hospital by tomorrow evening. I cannot tell you how glad I am, despite of the things that have occurred, which will cause me to quit my job, because I don't ever want to be in the presence of something so fierce that most people cannot even imagine to be true, not even in their wildest dreams. So this is my account, and I hope that the world will know that fairy tales and myths are true, and the world is really not what we believe it to be. Here the entry ends, and I honestly don't know what I should add to the finishing lines of Mr. Benson, which I could not have formulated in a better or more profound manner. Hence, I will finish this story with these final words of ambiguity, and say that you may decide whether you would like to believe in the account of Mr. Benson or not, for I will not judge this man's experience by any means, and leave this up to you.